Even when ratified, the INF Treaty will not totally eliminate the nuclear threat to Eurasia. The vast nuclear arsenal possessed by the USSR and the variety of delivery systems available still present a significant threat.
The organization of fail-safe inspection machinery could well be ritualized in a manner similar to that of established military processes. Inspection teams might be very like armies, and their technical equipment might be very like weapons. Inflating the inspection budget. In other words, what they want to do is they want to expand this. So what do we have? The INF Treaty, where it says inspection machinery could well be ritualized, according to Iron Mountain. Inspection teams might be very armies. And that's exactly what has happened. We have a great ritual of disarmament. It's very interesting what you find when you start digging into the INF treaty hearings. Limited test ban. Let's take a look at all the treaties. Limited test ban, 1963. Non-proliferation, 1968. The ABM Treaty, 1972. The SALT I, the SALT II, the IMF Treaty. Very long, drawn-out process. And this is exactly what Iron Mountain recommended be done. It is one of the most important elements of the INF Treaty is the President establishes in this area operating on-site inspection. One layer of the regime, it says on the last sentence, builds upon another, and the whole thing becomes elongated, and it actually becomes a monster in and of itself. The data exchanges required are really immense, and so it requires an elaborate governmental system in order to accommodate all of this. And so Iron Mountain recommendation number 2 has definitely been implemented. The second one is the universal health care was a recommendation of Iron Mountain. Universal health care for all. It's an economic substitute for the war economy. It's very interesting how all of this works. Health, drastic expansion of medical research, education, and training facilities, hospital and clinic construction, the general objective of complete government guaranteed health care for all. That's exactly what Clinton has introduced to the American people. He announced a universal health care and mandatory insurance program. And so they're putting everything in place exactly as Iron Mountain told them to do. It's universal, and you cannot exempt yourself from it, and it is causing a lot of trouble around the nation. But the arguments are not going to be on that basis. What is going to happen is we're going to be issued eventually a global identification card, and that is the purpose of this whole thing. The medical card has only one purpose, that's to get the foot in the door for the MARC system. Iron Mountain's third recommendation is being implemented. Iron Mountain economic substitute number 4, a new educational system to bring in globalism. Under the United Nations, UNESCO, Congressional Record, the Great Conspiracy to Destroy the United States, Education for Freedom and World Understanding. You see, all of this is designed to bring us into a world system, a global system, under the control of the United Nations. The second manifesto of the U.S. Office of Education, the implementation of the program of surrender through education. In other words, they destroy Americans' national pride and put us under the United Nations. And the NEA is leading in this. They even say it themselves, teaching about globalism and the world system. They say enduring peace cannot be attained until the nation states surrender to a world organization. This was found out during the Reese Committee hearings in Congress. Putting the evidence together, we conclude the NEA has been an important element in the tax-exempt world to indoctrinate American youth with internationalism, which is synonymous with a lot of communist, illuminist, whatever you want to call it. The Iron Mountain agenda is being carried out. Outcome-based education, the developing of leaders for restructuring the schools, change agents. Parents are beginning to get upset, but they are not putting it together. American 2000, a national strategy to change every nation, every family. Everything is going down exactly as Iron Mountain said it should. Global education is nothing more than a promotion of the United Nations and to destroy the Constitution of the United States, to bring us out from the Constitution and to merge us into the UN. That's what they're going to do. To improve learning and teaching by providing a national framework for educational reform, to promote research, consensus building, and systematic changes needed to ensure, you see, everything has to be changed. Guess what the changes all lead to? And guess who's behind it? If you look, Robert Mueller, former UN Secretary General to the UN, member of the Planetary Citizens, wrote the Global Core curriculum. Marilyn Ferguson, the Aquarian Conspiracy, New Age. This is all being integrated into the educational system of America. And it's called America 2000. And it is extremely subversive. The national and international power play for education. It's going to go through because God has decreed it will go through. And UNESCO is behind it. Gorbachev, we parted with the old world, rejecting it once and for all. We are moving towards a new world, the world of communism. We shall never depart from it. Books are on the market explaining all of this. We don't have time in this video to get into it. But Iron Mountain Recommendation 4 is being implemented. Iron Mountain Sociological Substitute for War, Slavery. Another possible surrogate for the control of potential enemies of society is the reintroduction in some form consistent with modern technology and political processes of slavery for the control of potential enemies of a society. Anyone that does not agree with the New World Order is an enemy of society and is therefore subject to slavery. Detention centers and concentration camps, work camps, are associated with forced labor, which is in reality slavery. Seizure under the executive orders of all civilians in work brigades, that's forced labor, that's slavery, which includes the rights to split up families. There are concentration camps, detention centers, all over the United States set up under FEMA, under Rex 84, and there are presently, to the last count we had, 130 such facilities in the United States of America. In Arizona, you'll see, for example, some there. We've got one here in Wisconsin. Concentration camps for U.S. citizens. The MJTF police to conduct house and house search and seizure and separation and categorization of men, women, and children and babies. Categorization and transfer to detention facilities and the running of detention facilities. Iron Mountain Slavery recommendation number 2 is mandatory service, a form of universal service, turned to some variant form of the Peace Corps or the Job Corps. It is entirely possible that the development of a sophisticated form of slavery may be an absolute prerequisite for social control in a world of peace. Now, this is just incredible when you really stop and look at what they're actually saying in relationship to biblical prophecies. Remember, Jesus said they're going to round you up and kill you. President Clinton has authorized boot camps for young offenders. Is this the beginning of a larger scale for social reorientation like the communists do? America 2000, the national plan that's going into our schools, requires mandatory community service. There are calls going out all the time. Bush and Clinton have called for mandatory community service for all youth. up to, say, 2 years, mandatory service. You can serve in the service or some other place, but you are going to serve. So the substitute for war is being implemented. Iron Mountain sociological substitute for war number 2 is called blood games. Games theorists have suggested in other contexts the development of blood games for the effective control of individual aggressive impulses. More realistically, such a ritual might be socialized in the manner of the Spanish Inquisition and the less formal witch trials of other periods for the purposes of social purification, state security, or other rationale both acceptable and credible to post-war societies. Inquisitions, witch trials for the purpose of social purification, state security, which is the key one. Such a ritual might be socialized. In other words, they make it into a big social event like the Inquisitions were. We saw part of that beginning to unravel when we watched the Branch Davidian invasion and subsequent massacre of David Koresh and his group. A lot went down at Waco that very few Christians understand. David Koresh, the Branch Davidians, were demonized by the national media. First of all, they were tried, judged, and executed in a social ritual in total violation of every right guaranteed under state and federal constitutions. The Waco massacre followed all points of ritualized killing. They were a cult. It was for social purification, and therefore they deserved what they got. Their compound was raided by federal assault groups when in fact there was no evidence of any crime having been committed.
Yesterday's action ended in a horrible human tragedy. Mr. Koresh's response to the demands for his surrender by federal agents was to destroy himself and murder the children who were his captives, as well as all the other people who were there who did not survive. He killed those he controlled, and he bears ultimate responsibility for the carnage that ensued.
It says inspection machinery could well be ritualized according to Iron Mountain. Inspection teams might be very armies. And that's exactly what has happened. We have a great ritual of disarmament. It's very interesting what you find when you start digging into the INF treaty hearings.
Even when ratified, the INF Treaty will not totally eliminate the nuclear threat to Eurasia. The vast nuclear arsenal possessed by the USSR and the variety of delivery systems available still present a significant threat.
The organization of fail-safe inspection machinery could well be ritualized in a manner similar to that of established military processes. Inspection teams might be very like armies, and their technical equipment might be very like weapons. Inflating the inspection budget. In other words, what they want to do is they want to expand this. So what do we have? The INF Treaty, where limited test ban. Let's take a look at all the treaties. Limited Test Ban, 1963. Non-Proliferation, 1968. The ABM Treaty, 1972. The SALT I, the SALT II, the IMF Treaty. Very long, drawn-out process. And this is exactly what Iron Mountain recommended be done. It is one of the most important elements of the INF Treaty is the President establishes in this area operating on-site inspection. One layer of the regime, it says on the last sentence, builds upon another. And the whole thing becomes elongated, and it actually becomes a monster in and of itself. The data exchanges required are really immense, and so it requires an elaborate governmental